guide to navigating the workplace as a Black woman. The Black Womaning in Corporate America podcast with your host, Nicole S. Palmer. I am the CEO and founding partner of Delnick Media, an independent publishing company that amplifies underrepresented and marginalized voices. This podcast was inspired by my award-winning and best-selling book, Playing the Game While Black Womaning in Corporate America. Let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode of Black Womaning in Corporate America with your host, Nicole S. Palmer. So this month of April, we've been talking about burnout and self-regulation, specifically among Black women. And to that end, something interesting happened. We had first a wonderful conversation to kick off the month with Lauren DK. She is the founder of Hormonal Wellbeing, and she had a lot of wonderful things to share. She's a somatic practitioner. She shared a lot about burnout and self-regulation. And in looking ahead to some of the conversations I wanted to have around this topic this month, I revisited a story time I'd shared a while ago that didn't really start or wasn't really about burnout per se, not on the surface, but listening back to it with these new glasses or this new vision, thanks to Lauren DK, I recognize that it actually is. Because some of the very things that I identified, some of the patterns that came up in this experience that I had with this individual that I go into details, really were some of those same patterns that I experienced when I was at the job that shall not be named. Some of those symptoms and behaviors that showed up because I was not self-regulating, or because I was burned out, because I took on too much. And so when I look back at that conversation, I look back with more clarity. I still am grateful that the choices that were made, but it actually showed me some of those same patterns that were manifesting themselves, that weren't just about merely being unresponsive. It really spoke to a bigger symptom, a bigger problem, I should say. And this was just some of the manifestations of it.
Burnout is the body saying, I am over capacity, right? I have too much on my plate. And so I'm going to start to collapse your energy so that you conserve it.
I want you to listen to this differently. Maybe you went through a recent experience, either it was you or someone you had an exchange with, and you may be able to start seeing some of those patterns emerge. So have a listen, and would love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to leave a comment wherever you listen to this podcast. All right, so I got a little bit of time, so I'm going to do a quick story time because I got time today, and I want your thoughts on something. When is long too long? Get your head out the gutter. So I'm referring to if you are either working with somebody or partnering with somebody or whatever the case is, and you enter into an agreement to work together, what is the protocol in terms of what is a reasonable time frame for them to get back to you? For example, if you send an email and you're having a conversation, what are your expectations in terms of when they get back to you? An hour, couple hours, a day, couple days? Like, what is the expectation? If you're, and this is, I love to hear from my small business owners or just entrepreneurs, people who have their own businesses, execs, stuff like that. Not necessarily corporate, because we all know corporate is a different beast, but let me know what is reasonable in terms of a time frame, a turnaround time frame. Let's use this as, for example, this is a real example I'm using. You select a contractor for a job or a project, right? And you hammer out the details on the contract. You both come to an agreement. You send the revised contract, and you're waiting for them to sign it so then you can sign it and then you can move forward. How much time do you wait, or what is a reasonable time frame to receive that contract? Either side, whether you're the person who sent the contract or you're the person receiving the contract and need to execute. What do you think is a reasonable turnaround time? Let me give you some more context. You have been going back and forth with this individual over the course of several weeks, about a month altogether. And each time that you have a conversation or a discussion about something, it takes them 3 to 5 business days to respond. So if you reach out to them today and be like, what's the status on so-and-so, or whatever the case is, a question or a conversation, you start part of the dialogue, they don't respond until 3 to 5 days later. And that happens for every single exchange you have. And every time they respond, they apologize, they tell you this and that and the other is happening, they're traveling, whatever the case is. And this goes on over a month, 3 to 5 business days for each response, with very few exceptions. I will give credit for that. And then you finally agree to the contract, finally agree to the terms of the contract, and you send the contract and no response. For now, this is the 4th business day. What do? Do you just say it is what it is and work like that? Do you raise the issue or do you move on? We decided to move on based on a pattern of behavior. And you could say, you need to be responding this time. The fact that they were apologizing tells me they're full well 3 to 5 business days is not acceptable in terms of response times. If you have to apologize every time you send an email, perhaps consider to stop doing the thing that causes you to have to send an apology. But I legitimately want to hear from y'all. I'm a small business owner. I'm the CEO of a company I founded with my husband, and we are in the market for a head of fundraising and partnerships. We thought we found our person. We were super excited. Had my initial conversation, went really, really well. I was just excited to get things going. And unfortunately, over the course of time, we had several hiccups along the way. The first hiccup was 100% on me. I'll take ownership of that because I was so excited when I had the initial conversation. I did not have the conversation around rates. Now, to be clear, this is a fractional partnership, profit sharing. So entered in eyes wide open with the understanding that it wasn't initially going to be profitable. So that said, and regardless of that, that's a conversation we should have had in the beginning, in the very initial conversation. We didn't have that conversation, and that is 100% on me. Nevertheless, sent the contract over, and then the ghosting started happening. The lags began. And so it was clear to me that, at least I inferred, put it that way, that she wasn't happy with the terms. So reached out, hey, want to get an update because I hadn't heard anything. And then she let me know she had questions about the contract. I said, no problem, absolutely. So when we first met, we got on a video call. It was positive vibes, high energy, really excited. And so I assumed that we were going to meet on a video call once again. And she said, no, a phone call will be fine, which immediately made me think, okay, she wants to set some distance, a boundary for herself. And then I started to strongly suspect, that she had an issue with the terms and wasn't happy about them. And that kind of carried over into the conversation because it was a very awkward conversation compared to the initial conversation. There was some, not just awkward silence, but it was like a lot of tension. You can actually feel it on the call. And I tried to do some nudging. I said, is there any other questions you have? Because based on the few questions that she asked, it was very obvious that the terms were an issue. But she didn't come out and say that. She just asked certain questions without saying, can we talk about negotiating the terms? She simply was asking to restate what was in the contract. And so I said to her, do you have any other questions? Is there anything else you want to discuss? Because by then it was very obvious that she had an issue with the terms. But to me, I think it's important for people to just, if you're going to be there, you got to meet me halfway. So I was hoping and expecting that she would actually say something at that point. She did not. So some more time passed, more days. And I finally decided to send an email and say, hey, I get the sense you're not happy with the terms of the contract. And I completely understand that. And maybe this won't be a good fit. Or you can talk to me about what you have an issue with, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. And I genuinely meant that. And then she went, I think maybe she replayed the tape and realized that maybe it didn't show her in the best light. And so she wanted to get on a video call a little bit after that. So I think maybe more time passed. And then we met on a video call and we had a great conversation. And at the time, she indicated that she was okay because she understands we're just starting out and all these things. I wasn't comfortable because I felt like that would put us on uneven footing. If you have an issue with the terms, it doesn't matter how good the role is, you're going to resent it. I mean, that happens to all of us. We take our jobs like, oh, it's perfect, but that but becomes everything. And having worked in corporate America as long as I didn't want that. I didn't want the relationship to sour because she felt like she got it wrong. So I asked her point blank, what is a number that would get you excited? And I don't know if I stumped her. I don't know. I think for some reason, I don't always get taken at face value. And I tell people all the time, who I am on social media is who I am in real life. And so I don't put on a persona on social media that I take off and then I become the real Nicole outside of social media. What you see is what you get. You know why? Because trying to be two people is exhausting. And so I am just who I am. And I distinctly remember because I struggled with even sending the email to try to suss out what was going on. And God reminded me of a couple of things I said to her in the initial conversation. One thing I said, the two things that are most important to me is transparency and integrity. And I said, in so much so that, to be clear, even though it's the profit sharing agreement, there will be a contract. So this is not like a verbal, handshake deal. There will be a contract. Everything will be stipulated. There's not going to be any gotchas. 100% what you see is what you get. And I also was reminded, distinctly said to her, I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And I 100% wholeheartedly mean that. I stand on that, 10 toes. And so that was encouraging for me because it then gave me the resolve and the courage to say what needed to be said because it was clearly the elephant in the room. And so when we fast forward to this video conference and I did say what would be a number you'd be excited about. And she threw out a number and I countered 1% higher. And apparently that threw her as well. And maybe it was just because like that was too easy. And so I said, so would that number work for you? And then she said, well, I'll have to think about it. And I thought, okay, no problem. And so more time passed. And we had that conversation sometime Friday. And then, I don't know, maybe I was naive to think that I was going to hear something on Monday. I did not. I believe it was Tuesday or Wednesday when I finally heard. And again, apologies for the delay. And she mapped out what she thought would be fair. And I had no issues with it. There was just one wording that needed to be modified, and that was it. But the actual amount we agreed on. You know, I talked it with hubby. He thought it made sense, and so we were fine with it. So that same day, after she had presented it, let me take it back. The same day when I agreed, there was confusion around the wording that I provided. And I explained to her based on the guidelines of the American Association of Fundraisers. I think the last letter's an F. Y'all can figure that out for yourselves. Anyway, there's an association specifically around fundraising and it has very clear guidances and stipulations to ensure that you are operating ethically and morally. And so we wanted to make sure that we were doing that. Although we are not 100% experts in fundraising, it's important for us to do things above board. So I wanted to make sure we were doing that. And so because of that, I did let her know that we would just have to adjust this one word and here's why according to. So I think that took a day. Good, because I think there was time that she needed to, consider or think about the wording. So a day or two passed before she asked the question. I answered the question, and then she said, okay, great. And so I revised the contract. I sent an email letting her know the contract would be coming and where it would be coming from. Nothing. So the contract was sent Monday, and now it's Thursday, and I've heard nothing. And I did explain in the email that I sent what changes were, and still radio silence. And the thing that kept coming back to me as more time passed in between each exchange was, is this how it will be with potential donors and prospects? And that gave me a lot of pause because obviously we're just starting out. We don't want to have a reputation of doing things haphazardly or having inordinate delays. And so that concerned me. And so then the question is, well, what do you do? Do you handhold? You don't have time to handhold, nor should you have to. And I'm not corporate. Like, nobody's trying to be corporate. And then you start to wonder, wrongly or rightly, that's not for me to say, but you start to wonder how much of the fact that I was a fellow Black woman had anything to do with the treatment that I received. Because I'll be honest with you, I've been guilty of this. And sometimes I feel the way we treat each other is very different than how we treat others. And that bothers me. And when I say I've been guilty of this, I say that I feel a level of comfort around Black women that I don't feel around non-Black people. In the sense of feeling like you can more readily let your guard down, is what I'm saying. That you're not necessarily having to be on alert or be mindful that something might be said that is inappropriate or macroaggression, and you suddenly have to filter down to the appropriate response. So that is what I mean, okay, just to be clear. So I get the level of, hey, I'm around my people, I can essentially let my hair down. What I have found, though, and this is not something that I am guilty of, but I have found, this has been my experience, the way that I am treated by fellow, not all, calm down, the way that I am treated by some fellow Black women in terms of respect and urgency and prioritization is very different than how they treat non-fellow Black women. So there's a higher urgency, there's a higher level of not just respect, but decorum, I guess is what I would say. And granted, I struggled even sharing this because I know I'm an impatient person, like by nature, 100% impatient. And this is something I've worked on over the years and I'm still working on. I'm a work in progress. I don't know that I'm ever not going to be an impatient person. And I know everybody has different levels. I know that my level of impatience is so high that I don't pray to God for more patience, because more patience means more trials. I pray to God to help me manage the patience that I have. Because it is 100% real. So I get that. So I understand about extending grace. So I do take a step back all of the time when it comes to what is a reasonable time frame. Because I know that my time frame is not everyone else's time frame. I'm the type of person that will respond to an email in 5 minutes after I've received it. And it'll 100% be me, because not only am I chronically online, but I believe in being responsive. When I don't respond right away, is either I'm not available or I need to take some time to reflect on what has been sent to me. Those are typically the main reasons I don't respond right away. That's just who I am by nature, and I appreciate the hell out of people who are like that. But I recognize that not everybody is like that, and it's taken me a while, but I got there. So I get that it might take one business day, maybe even two. And even then, I will say to you is I still, like shoes on the other foot, I still typically, unless it's a cold email that I've been told is in the inbox, like unless it's a cold email, I will typically reach out and like, hey, I need a minute, or, hey, got your email, I'll circle back if I can't respond right away with something in full. And although rare chances that it takes me longer than 2 business days, I do apologize, apologies for the inordinate delay, but it is not common for me to take more than 1 to 2 days to respond to emails. But that's just me, and I get everybody's not like that. And even then, honestly, it's like a couple hours. And so I thought, and this is maybe where I'm mistaken, I could use people's input, I thought 1 to 2 days was the standard, 1 to 2 business days was like the standard response time when someone sends you correspondence, especially if you're in the midst of finalizing something that I believe would be time sensitive. I also thought, again, perhaps wrongly, that if you're in the beginning stages of entering into an agreement with a client or company, whatever the case is, you're going to put your best foot forward. And maybe I'm also mistaken there. I have gotten plenty of offers before. Either it's a employee offer, contract consultancy, what have you. I don't wait. Like, they are going to hear from me the same day. Unless I don't have internet or a signal, they will best believe hear from me the same day. Because time is money, and also time is opportunity. And the more time you take to respond to something, the greater deduction there is on that opportunity. And especially when you have to keep in mind that other people could be weighing in, right? And so I try to like think through the reasoning behind why there was such a delay, and try to understand it, and keep it in mind that I totally get that we're not the top priority. That was not at all my impression or my assumption. But I also believe there has to be a balance, right? And so if we are entering into an agreement, there at least needs to be a clear enough open line of communication that there is a level of comfort and ease and confidence that things are going to move along the way that they need to move along. And if you are not in a position to do that because other parties are more competing than this one, then the right thing to do is to say so and be honest about it, rather than stringing an opportunity along and then not making it a priority at all, because that's how it feels. And it actually was a good learning experience for me, in the sense that I look back at opportunities that I've had for myself, paying opportunities, that I did not put my best foot forward because I took on too much. And so I recognize what something is when I've experienced or had a similar situation. And so I think that's why I'm seeing kind of the flags. And I thought to myself, well, it's one thing to take too long to respond to me, but what about a donor that wants to plunk down 6 figures, right? What about a donor that wants to put down 5 figures? I mean, who cares the amount, right? What does that look like then? To me, it doesn't look great. So I started recognizing the patterns that I had myself when I took on way too much, because I was just focused on opportunity and income and dollars, rather than focusing on balance and what was reasonable and achievable in the time frame that I had set for myself. And it can snowball fast. And I don't believe it was intentional, but I believe that there are assumptions that we make based on who we are dealing with. And unfortunately, I have found that there is a subset, or there's a somewhat of an occurrence, is what I'll say. I don't have any numbers to quantify, where it's okay to not be respectful of the time of an individual who looks like you, who is from the same group or class as you, because they'll get it. And I can't operate that way, because we're trying to operate a business. And while I appreciate that this person was a front runner, and I'm sure they would be phenomenal if they had the time, I have to be able to recognize when it's time to cut ties. And this wasn't a decision that I made lightly. This is something that I agonized with hubby over, because I knew, one, we made this announcement. At least everyone who follows either us or this individual knows that this happened, and now we're essentially moving on. And not that I want to make a big to-do about it. I think for me, it's not sitting right with me in the sense of why or how it happened. And also, maybe this is also an educational opportunity for me to understand and hear from you all. What is acceptable? What is something you're comfortable with? Is 3 to 5 business days the norm now? I'm genuinely asking, because I don't find that acceptable. But maybe I'm mistaken on what is considered acceptable now when it comes to being responsive. I think I still thought 1 to 2 business days at most. But y'all tell me. Y'all sound off and let me know. I know this is going to make some people uncomfortable. This is not my truth. This is the truth. Y'all know I stay with the receipts. I'm not here to out anybody or call them by name. But I definitely want to talk about this, because I do, again, y'all know I don't have a problem having uncomfortable conversations or talking about the things that other people don't want to talk about. But it is what it is. And as a business owner, as a Black female business owner, this is a problem. This is not acceptable. And I am curious to know if, am I mistaken here? That I missed the forest for the trees? I would love to know. I understand that this is like an era of like people doing multiple roles, multiple opportunities, and hey, I'm not going to knock it. I'm still in corporate while very much trying to build our empire, so I get that. But I also recognize that you can only take on what you can take on. And you have to recognize what is too much, and when you're taking on way too much, and when you have to let some things go, no matter how attractive the opportunity looks like. And so that's essentially where I'm at. This went someplace I didn't expect it to go. I expected this to be a very short question/conversation, but I'd love to hear from y'all. What is acceptable in terms of response times? What is considered acceptable? 3 to 5 business days? Is that the new normal? Or are we still at 1 to 2 business days? Let a girl know. All right, that's all I have for this episode. I came in swinging. And probably make a couple people squirm, but it is what it is. I wish them all the best 100%. I just know it won't be here because that is not the time frame. Like, we are not trying to, if you calculate how much time that would take to get one thing off the ground, we would never get off the ground. And we don't have that kind of time. So again, wish them all the best. I hope that they find the opportunity that's right for them. And I hope that we find the candidate that's right for us. All right. Bye. Phew, I know that was a doozy, right? So looking back, though, to wrap it up, right? Looking back, I don't think this was ever about just response times. It was about what I was noticing and still trying to work through anyway, because real talk, when something shows up consistently, it's no longer a delay, it's data. Okay? Clock that T. And sometimes burnout doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from staying too long in situations that already told you what they were. Hey, if you can't say amen, say ouch, okay? So the real question that I have for you all is, what patterns are you explaining away that your body has already made clear? Okay? Yeah, so let's get into that. Sound off in the comments. Would really love to hear your input, especially because if you haven't figured it out by now, we're driving this theme home of self-regulation and burnout that Lauren DK was so gracious to kick us off for this month. So let me know in the comments. The question again that I have for y'all, what patterns are you explaining away that your body has already made clear? All right, let me know. Until next time, y'all, take care. Thanks for tuning in to Black Womaning in Corporate America, the podcast. If today's episode spoke to you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, or submit a 5-star rating wherever you're listening. And don't forget to grab your copy of Playing the Game While Black Womaning in Corporate America, available now wherever books are sold. Until next time, take care.